In this video, we are talking about this Magic Key news that dropped today. We finally got renewal information. Our national nightmare has ended, and we have the details. We're going to break it down. We're going to discuss it up next. Thank you so much for joining OG55, where we're talking about the Magic Key renewal information. It finally dropped today. Renewals officially kick off on Thursday, so a day after tomorrow, so pretty soon. But before we dive into all this fun stuff, I want to introduce my co-host, my producer, VashSky, Dre, host of the Freshly Squeezed show here on OG55. Welcome back, brother.
Hey, yeah, I'm happy to be back. It's interesting. We alluded to it yesterday on the live stream, right? That maybe something was percolating behind the scenes. Maybe something was coming around the corner. And it looks like it has. 1 week later than it may have predicted, right? But here nonetheless. And I'm very excited to get started with it. But before we do that, if you want to go ahead and interact with me on Twitter, you can go ahead or follow me. You can go ahead and do so right down there at VashSky, just like it's spelled. And if you want to see me, well, it's going to be on the channel you're watching right now, Orange Grove 55 at Freshly Squeezed. Your source for juicy news and info squeezed fresh right from the Grove.
I am altering the deal. Pray I don't alter it any further.
Nah, I think that can only mean one thing there, OG.
Yeah, we're talking Magic Keys. We're talking Magic Keys. And we're going to break down the information. We're also going to break down the TOS because that was a big sticking point, I think, for the first key rollout. So we want to make sure everyone's aware going into this, know what you're getting into, right?
Yeah,
know
absolutely, 100%.
100%. So let's dive in. I guess we could start off by just kind of diving into like what the new keys kind of entail, and we'll kind of go from there.
Yes, yeah. So you can go ahead and bring up the graphic on screen here. Just to clarify here, they have put the, let's say, the Dream Key away for now. Now, I believe it was Robert Niles, if I'm not mistaken, had an article first about all of this information and made it seem like the Dream Key was going to be replaced. Now, I'm here to clarify something real fast. They are not replacing the Dream Key. Still there, just in the background, won't be available. They are replacing its position as the top key with another key. Now, that's going to be very, very important as we get along here, so I want to go ahead and make that distinction right now, and I have some evidence to suggest that's exactly what they're doing. So, we'll go ahead and start off with what replaces the Dream Key in the top tier bracket, and that's now the Inspire Key. So it looks like it's going to be $1,600, so about, I believe, $200 more than the Dream Key was when it made its debut this time last year, if I'm not mistaken, OG?
Yes.
Right. And and it looks like you're still going to have 6 park reservations, which I thought was, again, pretty generous, but say la vie, this is what they're going with. 20% off select merchandise, 15% off food and beverage, unlimited Disney Photo Pass, and now 20% off of Disney Genie Plus, which is very, very interesting because it looks like they want maybe a little bit of uptick in additional sales from the Disneyland consumer base to echo maybe the additional sales that they're getting for Genie Plus over there at Walt Disney World. That is a kind of a fascinating thing. The other fascinating thing about all of this, where the terms and conditions were pretty much, they were very similar to the prior iteration of these specific keys here, with the notable exception being that that Genie Plus was going to be offered at a 20% discount. But I want to go here and start with the Enchant and Imagine Key, because this has something very, very interesting attached to it. It looks like you're going to have a 25% discount on standard theme park parking, which, if I'm not mistaken, these keys previously didn't qualify at all for a discount on parking, if I'm remembering correctly. But here's where it gets very interesting. Only at the Toy Story parking area.
Right.
Now that is fascinating. OG, what do you have to make of on all this?
Yeah, well, it's actually kind of a smart move on Disney's part, where they're able to control the flow of where people even park by giving them discounts at only certain parking structures. And from Disney's perspective, when they want to control the congestion, they want to control the flow. It's kind of brilliant. You know, you get a 25% discount on the Toy Story lot. You're going to park in the Toy Story lot. At least you're going to try to initially.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's Disney's way of kind of corralling these key holders into where they want them to go. And
Yes.
it's actually kind of brilliant. I've never even considered that. And that's why these people at Disney, they, you know, I mean, they're in a lot of ways. Look, you can argue all day about how Disney does this or that, but one thing they're not in short supply of, it's creative ways to make money and to kind of get what they want. They know how to do this, and this Toy Story discount is example A of that. I mean, it was really kind of a brilliant move from their perspective. At least.
It's a very interesting thing, and Chapek did allude to them having a much more surgical approach when it came to in the case that he was referring to was pricing. But I think this will be the standard going forward to be much more surgical in their approach when it comes to all kinds of stuff, including corralling of the annual pass holder population. Right. It's just very interesting how we're seeing that manifest itself in this particular way with with the various parking options available at the Disneyland Resort. Like you said, something I hadn't previously considered. I always kind of thought that the Toy Story parking lot was a bit more convenient than the alternative structures, but I guess they want to go ahead and delineate between the two. It's a very, very interesting, fascinating thing.
One question I have, though, and I don't know, maybe this is covered in the TOS, maybe it's not. But Disney in the past has directed traffic to kind of funnel people into certain structures because of maybe like an event, let's say a Run Disney event or something like that, right?
Correct.
So what happens if you're not allowed to access a Toy Story parking lot for whatever reason? Maybe there's a Run Disney event if they bring them back, or maybe there's something else going on in the Anaheim area where they close the Toy Story lot off.
Wow.
And now they're forcing people to go to the lot where they don't get the discount.
Well, just like that TOS perfectly illustrates, subject to availability, I think is what the answer there is what it's going to be. And I believe there's some asterisks there intimating that maybe that might be the case, right? That your discount when it comes to parking is only going to be subject to the availability of the Toy Story lot itself. So if they have a big event or something, you might be out of luck. It's interesting though that they offer parking discounts at all and at these various tiers. If I'm not mistaken, only the Imagine Key, or no, I think it was the Believe Key, the one previously lower than Dream Key, only offered a 50% discount. And then there wasn't any sort of parking discount offered at all for the remaining keys, Enchanted Imagine, back in the day. Now you have an option, but again, it's the smallest lot of them all. So it's a little bit of, having their cake, eat it too kind of thing, because Toy Story is limited to such an extent, the likelihood that you'll have to pay full price is probably quite high.
Oh yeah,
especially if it's available to these other keys.
Right. No, 100%. Absolutely.
But now let's get into the nitty gritty, because I think that's what everybody comes here for. Just a little deeper, right?
Deep dive.
Got to go a little deeper, and this is what was fascinating. So, Scott Goostin was the first one to point this out with the updated TOS, and it says this. And we'll go ahead. We'll get to the actual TOS to confirm that this is what it says. But I want to go ahead and section out this paragraph, because this completeness is kind of at the end of the TOS. But they make it clear that the portion of this at the very top in bold print, underlined, they're letting you know. Okay.
Right,
binding arbitration agreement and class action waiver. You and Disney define for purposes of this binding arbitration agreement and class action waiver to mean Walt Disney Parks and Resorts, U.S., Inc., and all of its affiliates each agree that any dispute or claim relating in any way to your Disneyland Resort Magic Key will be resolved by binding arbitration, with the sole exception of claims that qualify for small claims court as set forth below. You acknowledge that you and Disney are each waiving the right to file a lawsuit with the sole exception of claims that qualify for small claims court as set forth below, and the right to a jury trial. You and Disney also agree that any and all disputes must be brought in the parties' individual capacities. You and Disney, therefore, agree to waive any right to litigate or arbitrate any claims as a class action or other representative or collective action. They're telling you right off the bat, we're not going to have what happened with the last Dream Key happen again. This is, there's not going to be any surprise class action. There's not going to be any surprise legal action. And this is also reflected in the initial terms and conditions, which we'll also get into. But we were told, OG, by some people that we were, that we know very, very well, friends of the channel for sure.
Yep.
That the decision regarding Magic Keys in the future might not be necessarily impacted by the lawsuit or the status thereof and all that kind of stuff. Clearly, that is maybe not the case, at least in this capacity. They're going to protect themselves as much as possible going forward, and we'll detail specifically how coming up here. But OG, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's understandable. I mean, they're getting sued, so they're going to do what they have to do to protect themselves going forward. I mean, just like any person would. I mean, it's this is the natural response. We kind of all saw this coming. And when the class action or the pending class action lawsuit was sort of set forth, we kind of knew like Disney was going to react this way. They're going to cover their butt as much as possible now going forward because, well, I mean, they're already going through some shit right now because they didn't dot their I's and cross their T's before. So this is this is definitely the expected outcome. I mean, I don't think anyone expected otherwise. The lawyers comb through this and they're making sure that any loophole that was in the last one is not going to be in this one, and you're not going to sue them.
100%. 100%. This is exactly what this is. And they made a finer point of it, like I said, in bold print, underlined right at the top of this Disneyland Resort Magic Key Terms and Conditions page, right there. Right. Make no mistake, they ain't going to be had like they did last time. No. Which we'll get into it here. But we probably should actually before I go on with my expanded thoughts. So they say so right here, and what I want to go ahead and read. We'll go ahead and read. We'll just read. Okay. By purchasing a Disneyland Resort Magic Key, you are purchasing a limited license to enter the Disneyland Resort theme parks. Disneyland Magic Key holders, pass holders, and their Magic Key passes are subject to and must comply with the below terms and conditions, as well as any other applicable terms, conditions, and agreements, including but not limited to the Walt Disney Company terms of use, yada, yada, yada. They're just basically saying, okay, look, your pass is going to be subject to the terms and conditions therein. I got you. But this first kind of paragraph here makes it very clear that they're going to protect theirs, and that this entire terms and conditions page was impacted by the lawsuit directly. To enter a Disneyland Resort theme park, each pass holder is required to have both a theme park reservation and a pass valid for admission to the same park on the same day that they plan to visit. Okay, fair enough. With the purchase of a pass holders become eligible to make park reservations to visit during their pass term. Okay, so good so far. Pass blockout dates are dates on which a pass type is not valid for theme park admission and not eligible to make or hold any park reservations. Okay, got you. Pass blockout dates are different for each pass type and should be reviewed before the purchase or renewal of a pass. Now, because every single one of these available pass types has blockout dates, they don't have to make a distinction in the blockout language. Right. Every single one of them has blockout dates, so that comes with the with a notable understanding, outright. Park reservations for pass holders are limited in number and subject to the availability of park reservations allocated to passes as determined by Walt Disney Parks and Resorts, Inc. Applicable pass blockout dates and theme park capacity. So they're telling you it's all subject to them. Right. And they make it quite clear here. Disney allocates daily park reservations among passes and daily theme park tickets, the separate buckets that we were talking about before and that we've talked about multiple times on the show, and therefore makes available to those pass holders eligible to make park reservations for a particular day only a portion of the total park reservation capacity. So they're telling you, this was one of the things brought up in the lawsuit here, that, I didn't know that capacity was going to be divided, right? The plaintiff in the lawsuit suggested that she didn't know that there were going to be separate buckets, that park reservation capacity was going to be total capacity of the entire park and not be distinguished between the two pass types. They're making clear right here, right off the bat, that is not the case, that they're going to separate you from a ticket holder in terms of reserving the overall park reservation capacity. Okay. A pass, therefore, does not guarantee park entry, even on dates when a pass is not blocked out, and even when a theme park is not at capacity. Disney determines the number of park reservations available for pass holders for any date, and pass holders may access only those reservations that Disney makes available to them. They're telling you they're going to put you in this bucket, and this is all going to be relevant soon, folks. I guarantee you, I promise you, but it's important to understand this. Once all park reservations made available to pass holders for any date are reserved, pass holders may not make reservations for that date using their pass unless and until reservations become available due to cancellations or Disney makes additional Magic Keys reservations available, which Disney is not required to do, but may or may not do from time to time at its discretion. That's Christine Wastelands McCarthy pulling on them levers, just like she talked about on that third quarterly earnings report. Okay. On any given date, park reservations may still be available for theme park tickets, even though park reservations allocated to the passes are fully reserved. Even for dates that are not blocked out to a pass type, it may be difficult or not possible for pass holders to get a park reservation to visit on their preferred dates or preferred theme park, including popular dates like weekends, holiday periods. Fair enough. Since Magic Key park reservations are available on a first-come, first-served basis, it may also be difficult or not possible at times for pass holders to get park reservations for certain dates. Okay. Park reservations are not transferable, not guaranteed for any specific dates or park, no matter the pass type. Disney reserves the right. Now, here's what's interesting. Actually, let's go ahead and hold off on that last part here.
Okay.
OG, what do you think about what we've read so far? And I'll share my thoughts.
Disney, in my opinion, and I've always felt this way, Disney is private property. So, I mean, it's always subject to, like, any business has the right to refuse anybody from going in onto their property, into their store, into anything. I mean, these private businesses, these companies, they've always had that right. It's not a God-given right that people are allowed to go into Disneyland. Like, so the fact that Disney is saying, you know what, we're going to decide if you're allowed in or not, it's kind of always been that way, you know? I mean, look, it's always been that way. It's not a God-given right. It's not, you're not walking on a public road or something. You're going into Disney's private property. Honestly, it's a privilege to get in there. They don't have to let you in. And they can arbitrarily make these rules that today we're only going to have 15 people in the gate. And they would have every legal right to do that. And kind of where I'm at now. Is that fun? Does that suck? Yeah, it does. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's kind of how it's always been, and they're exercising that right, and it's, you know, that's kind of how it is.
And that's it. It's their property, and they have the right to choose, how many people are let in, of what pass type, and so forth. I mean,
yeah.
And they're telling you, uncertain terms, but worded differently, that you're going to be second-class citizens here. You're going to be backfill, essentially. That's what they're doing. That's what the entire intent was, and that's what Kirsten Wastelands McCarthy intimated as such. She said that, hey, we can turn on these levers, on or off at will based on consumer demand from domestic and international tourists. And they've made it quite clear that they are going to continue to do that practice. And they have called any legal ability for any of these pass holders to go forward with a lawsuit involving a jury or a class action. This is what they said here, and this is why I'm saying to each and every one of you, I'm telling you, folks, if you didn't like how you were treated back when this pass originally made its debut and into the holiday season, where people had a very hard time to getting reservations, for example, during the holiday months, I'm telling you, folks, right now, they're going to do it to you again. They're going to limit your access severely during the holiday period. Now, they might open up a little bit come January and so forth. But if anybody didn't like the disproportionate level of access that they were getting, as opposed to maybe ticket holders and so forth, they're telling you right now that they're going to do it again to you come the holiday period. So remember, when I was on the show here, when the Magic Key program initially made its debut, and I told people, hey, you might want to wait a little bit just to see how this all kind of shakes out. Some people waited, some people didn't. A lot of people complained about the level of access that they were getting. We now have history of them doing this. We now have that kind of lifeline that was pulled within the courts, now pulled from this entirely, unless you want to go to the arbitration process, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend. Disney's probably going to choose the arbiter in that case, and that was brought up an interesting question to me, who was going to actually pay for arbitration. It doesn't actually say here in the TOS, but it does say pretty much everything else attached to that arbitration process. So, I mean, I know like big, what is it, electronics or I should say internet-based companies like Patreon got in a little trouble with the arbitration terms and conditions because they fronted the costs for the arbitration to actually take place, and so a lot of people maybe abuse that. I don't know what happens here, folks. I'm still getting in, still trying to determine what happens in that case. But here's what's really interesting, and we had heard, OG, that January 1st, maybe there might be some changes when it comes to the reservation system as it relates to ticket holders. And they seem to be implying as much right here with this line. Disney reserves the right to change or cancel park reservation requirements at any time without notice or liability. Different types of pass holders, other ticketed guests, and or guests with other passes may have different or no reservation requirements from time to time or at any given time. Other restrictions, such as the number of park reservations hold per pass type, time during which a pass holder may hold or make reservations, and park hopper and no-show rules may change from time to time in Disney's discretion without notice or liability. But that previous sentence right there, that suggests that they might be thinking, and it's maybe like a dynamic thing, it might be a permanent thing going forward, that ticket holders who, Disney wants to entice, especially when it comes to the Disneyland Resort area,
right,
might not be subject to the same reservation system or none at all come soon. And what we're hearing is January 1st, they might be unlocking the doors here. So that's a very interesting thing, and they're telling you up front that may happen.
Well, and that points to this whole thing. If Magic Key holders, if you feel like you're being put on the back burner, it's because you are. Because honestly, we've seen it with the unfavorable comment. Magic Keys don't spend a lot of money. And regardless of what fans want to believe, they just don't. They pop in for an hour, 2 hours, they buy a popcorn bucket, they get dinner, and they leave. Okay, that Disney isn't impressed. Okay, they're not. They are prioritizing the day ticketers and the tourists and all that because they spend the money. There's a reason why, like Dre talked about, where they might remove the reservation system for day ticketers. They're not doing that just because they like all the day ticketers' personality more. No, they're doing that because the day ticketers spend money. So it's like, that's why they're being prioritized. Disney is a business, and they're going to prioritize the people that spend more money. If you have a store and you have a bunch of high school kids going into your store and just chilling, hanging out, and buying a pack of gum and leaving after 4 hours, well, you're probably going to get kind of pissed off, and because it's cutting into the people that actually come in and spend actual money, right? So that's kind of where Disney's at right now. Right? They see a lot of bodies in the park spending a very little amount of money. So they're trying to incentivize the people that go and actually spend a lot of money. I'm a key holder. I'm not throwing any shade. I'm just being honest. And it's self-reflection here. We don't spend the money. We don't spend the money like a tourist from Japan would. We just don't. And I don't care if you paid $1,400 up front. The rest of the year, you're not paying that much while you're in the parks. You're bringing your own lunch. You're buying the popcorn bucket. You're leaving. You're spending $34 and you're out the door. And Disney wants to really incentivize those tourists and those day ticketers to come. So I wouldn't be surprised at all, Dre, if they remove the reservation system for those day ticketers. That would totally incentivize. It would be a shot in the arm to the tourism market here at the resort. And I'd be 100% for it. 100% for it.
Oh, and I agree with you because I think it is an inhibitor for some tourists. I mean, I remember relating stories to you almost a year ago now from international visitors who had come in, staying at these deluxe resorts, coming to the California or Southern California area, expecting to get into Disneyland and not knowing that they needed the reservation beforehand.
Right.
And Disney loses out on all that revenue because they have tickets to sell, and yet these ticket holders, these international or domestic tourists can't actually use them. And it's interesting, I was talking to my mother about all this, going back and forth with her, and she brought up the great point that even if you wanted to buy like a 5-day ticket, for example, which they have available at all times of the year basically, and you wanted to use that for an upcoming vacation, you might have not been able to based on if reservations for that pass type were available within the 2-week period that you had to use it.
Right.
And I mean, come on here. It's a big inhibitor for visitation and potential profitability from that certain clientele. And this is why, I mean, look, if annual pass holders really did spend a lot of money,
they'd be prioritized.
Exactly. They wouldn't be looking to restrict them as hard as they are. They want to use them for backfill. And we heard Christine Wastelands-McCarthy say as much. Yeah. She said, look, listen, if demand abates from, ticket holders or whatever, who we want really into the park, then we'll go ahead, we'll turn that lever there, we'll let more pass holders in, or we'll sell more passes, or whatever they will do.
Right. 100%.
And this terms of service makes it abundantly clear that they can turn on a lot of levers. They can change the the blackout dates for pass holders. They can make more they can give people more reservations to use and spend. They can they can open up the buckets and reproportion that out the ratios between ticket holders and passes. They can do whatever they want, and they're telling you they might.
Yeah, no, they might. They absolutely might. They want those day ticketers. They want those tourism dollars. And if it's an off season where they're not getting a lot of that, okay, then we'll let you key holders in. But basically they would prefer to have those day ticketers and those tourists first, and last resort, okay, we'll let the key holders in. And it's all because of the money. It's not a personal thing. It's not Disney hates their most loyal fans. It's none of that. You just don't spend money like a tourist does. That's the only thing it is. That's the only thing it is. I also do have to. I am at issue a little bit when it comes to when people say the key holders are the most loyal fans, because I don't believe that. I think there are people who absolutely love this company, who absolutely love these parks, who don't get the privilege of going all the time. It's kind of an insult to those people to say that you have to be a key holder to be the most loyal fan. I don't necessarily believe that. I know a lot of people at work that I work with that are very casual fans and don't have a deep-seated love for the company that are key holders, So I'm at issue with that, because I do think there are people from other states, other countries that have a deep fondness for these parks and are not necessarily a key holder because of maybe they don't live in the area or something. So I don't like really, I know there's been a lot of articles and stuff saying that, and I don't really like the label that like key holders are automatically assumed to be the most loyal of fans. And that's just not the case. A lot of us are, but a lot of key holders are also just a lot of normies who take advantage of a great deal. Right. And they're going to get the key, the Magic Key and just do that. So we have a good friend who's actually from the UK, Matthew Murr. I mean, this guy loves the Walt Disney Company with a passion. He's very passionate about Walt. He's been on the show before, but he's very passionate about the Walt Disney Company. He lives in the UK. He's not at Disneyland all the time. But this guy was one of the most vocal voices on Twitter and social media about how they left Walt Disney's speech out on the anniversary. I think he's a loyal fan. Just because he doesn't have the privilege of being able to go to the park 6 days a week doesn't mean he's not a loyal fan. So yeah, I digress, but I do have issue with that. A lot of these, like LA Times, all these articles are going into that, and it really irks me. So I want to vent.
I definitely agree. I mean, when I hear loyal, I think you'll necessarily do anything in order to get access to that brand, right? And I mean, frankly, I think people who maybe live in the area, who maybe within like a 30-minute drive or so forth, I mean, yes, there is a loyalty there. I'm sure you do have loyal fans, but I don't know. I mean, the people who are willing to spend tens of thousands of dollars just to be in the Southern California area in order to take advantage of Disneyland when they can and when they are able, I mean, there's a loyalty too. So, yeah, I that's why I don't get into it.
It's not black and white.
Exactly.
It's not
there's no real gauge for that. So, look, listen, it goes back to what we were talking about before. If in fact these people were as loyal as maybe they intimated, and were as as high as spenders as maybe other particular demographics, those ratios would change.
Right.
And it looks like they're, the ratios that we saw in the previous holiday season, I think they're coming back in a big way, and I think that's how they're going to limit it.
And listen, folks. Do your research before you renew. I know it's really easy to like just jump in, like I'm gonna renew, but really do your research. You've already seen the last time how it can bite you in the butt if you don't really read into what you're signing up for. I'm not discouraging or encouraging anyone to do anything. I'm just saying, read this stuff, really go over it, understand what you're buying into, and then make an informed decision. Don't just go, oh, you know what? I'm going to get it. I'm just going to renew and ask questions later. Do not do that, because, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Okay. This is the second time now. If they fool you now, it's on you because you didn't do your homework.
That's true. And look, I mean, I know they're not making it easy necessarily, because it looks like the Robert Niles article suggested that they weren't going to allow anybody to buy a ticket just off the bat. That the only people that were going to be eligible in order to make purchases on Thursday were going to be people who are renewing. So they're going to be limiting how many they sell. And OG, I thought you brought up a good point about this when it came to this particular issue. Because you were saying that or you were suggesting that they were maybe whittling down the annual pass holder population just through their ability to control who actually buys it to this extent. OG, you want to go ahead and clarify this for me?
Yeah. Okay. Look, at my job, I'm going to use this analogy because I think it's pertinent here. In 2017, my job decided they're going to close the physical office in California because of rising costs, right? They're going to close the physical office and they're going to have us work from home. Cool. Started working from home. But they also said that they're not going to hire any new people in California, right? So what that did was basically, it basically ensured that they're going to thin the California employee base, because eventually people are going to get fired. Eventually people are going to quit and move on, and they're not replacing anybody. So they're basically thinning you out is what they're doing. Well, I see very much similarities here with the Magic Key. They're not letting any new people come in. They're only letting you renew. Well, inevitably there will be people who do not renew. They'll say that the new price of the Inspire key is too much. I'm not going to renew it. I'm not going to bother, or I'm not into Disney anymore. I'm not going to renew. So there will be people who fall off and they're not replacing it. So what's going to happen? Same thing that happened with my job, that those numbers are going to shrink because people fall out of the system. They're not replacing it. Shrink. Disney is trying to mitigate, bring those Magic Key numbers down by not allowing new sales, because they know not every single person is going to renew. People are going to fall off the system, and that's how they're mitigating it through that means. It's a slow process, but absolutely, it's a very slow process, but it's effective. It's very
but it's effective. And I kind of thought that's what they were going to do maybe with, Imagineers when it came to Lake Nona, right? That, that this process would be maybe a little bit slower than it was otherwise announced, and that they would just simply hire from Lake Nona.
Right.
And discontinue hiring practices in Glendale. Turns out that they were going to be a little bit more aggressive than that at first. Maybe they've slowed down a little bit, but I think that's the plan going forward, right? That you eventually, whittle down the Glendale offices so that Lake Nona becomes the dominant hiring area, and you just maybe leave a small team in Glendale for Disneyland-related projects. A very interesting thing. I think that's what we're seeing with the pass holders, like you said. Yeah. I mean, they want to control this pass holder population by hook or by crook. And I think restricting the purchase of these passes to just people who are renewing is a way in doing that. I think the approach here is going to be twofold. They're attempting to limit how many people actually have a pass on the front end, and on the back end, they're limiting your access and how many times you'll actually be able to use that pass when you have it. Look, guys, this is what this is, and they're telling you flat out here in this terms and conditions. I'm actually surprised that they're going to this extent, because they're telling you what they're going to do. They're telling you what's in store for y'all. If that doesn't happen to line up with what you want, that's the consideration that you need to make. Go ahead, OG.
Right. No, that's up to you guys. I wanted to ask you, Dre, and I already know the answer to this, but I want to ask you because we talked about it on the phone earlier, but I think it's a great kind of thing to dive into for the video and everything.
Absolutely.
This new TOS, kind of very much acknowledging, and we're both on the same page with this, like in terms of like each bullet point is addressing the lawsuit, right?
Yes.
Is that Disney sort of admitting that they don't really have much faith in this lawsuit, that they're on the losing end of this? Or is that Disney being confident and putting their nuts on the table saying, hey, you know what? Where are we at with this? Where do you feel that this is, what direction this is pointing in?
Well, I remember the videos we were actually talking about the lawsuit in great depth. We actually had the legal briefs and so forth. We were going through it line by line, which, funny enough, by the way, a nice little game to play is have the lawsuit on one side of the screen and have this TOS on the other, and you'll see it almost follows it, or, directly. Ooh. What do they make note here? Okay, make note here. What do they say here? Okay, what's their argument here? Okay, make note here. It's very much structured, almost like the lawsuit was actually structured, which is very, very funny. But I always said back in the day, I think this person has a good case right here, in that, there may have been a little bit of ignorance going into it. It wasn't necessarily expressed, or at least her concerns weren't expressed beforehand via their previously established TOS and, some of the advertisements they had therein. And that, she had a good chance of actually winning. And I think it's directly related to that chance of winning, I should say. It's directly related to what Disney's decision regarding the Magic Key program was, as illustrated by this TOS that we have here. Apparently, it did make quite the difference when, at least when writing this up here, and with with the changes that they've already made. For example, the Dream Key is not going to be available. It's only going to be lower ticket types. So basically, they're forcing everybody to downgrade, which is what we kind of said. We just didn't necessarily think it was going to happen in this way with a new product type and so forth. But we did kind of say that one of the ways that they could handle this is forcing people to downgrade. That's essentially what they're doing, just with another product. So the Dream Key, it's going to be the Inspire Key or whatever. So but in terms of your question...
Yeah, no, go ahead. And then on the back end, I'll ask you a question. Sure. I just thought about something, but go ahead.
Okay. Go ahead and leave that, make a note of that for sure, because I want to get to that. But what I wanted to say was, as far as the chances go, and for us how Disney feels about it, I think this is them admitting that the legal basis by which they think they're going to stand on might not be the strongest foundation to do so. Right? They're saying that we don't even want to get it into a legal battle or legal tussle with anybody with the binding arbitration clause. But they're also saying that if that were to happen, we're expressly stating, that the concerns that this plaintiff had are addressed here, And that leads me to believe that they might be looking to settle this out any way they can. Now, what's going to be particularly difficult about that is that the plaintiff there has to make that final say, and they're going to be taking the advice of their lawyers more often than not. But these lawyers, from what I understand, have their own agendas and have their own ties to the local hospitality area. The local hospitality industry in the area of Southern California. That this may have been motivated to get rid of the reservation system entirely. And I believe there will be an alleviation of the reservation system at the ticket level, which might placate the people who are really behind the attorneys, in that matter. But for the purposes of discovery and all that kind of stuff, Disney does not want this to go forward. They don't want the public black eye and all that. They're going to look to settle. Right. Now it becomes at what price is that plaintiff and their respective attorneys what price is going to satiate them in order to settle. That's kind of the big issue right there, because they want to do this before class action. Once it gets class action, you might have to settle amongst a range of class action participants, right? Right. That might be very complicated very fast, and that comes up in January. They're going to be looking to squash that before it even gets to that point. So I expect a settlement offer relatively soon, and if we don't, it's probably going to be around January when they might lift the restriction of the reservation systems for the ticket types at issue. The day tickets for domestic and international tourists. That might placate the people really behind the lawyers and the legal kerfuffle behind the plaintiff's side of things.
Yeah, it would be a two-pronged thing. Like they would kind of address it with if the lawyers are in the pocket of the hospitality industry, right? They'll kind of give them a little bit like, hey, you know what? Don't worry, January we're dropping the reservations for ticket holders, right? So that'll appease that end of it. Yes. And then they'll go to the plaintiff and say, hey, how's $5 million sound?
Exactly.
What can you do with $5 million? And I think that would pretty much diffuse it. I think at the end of the day, there's going to be some settlement. I would be shocked if it goes any further beyond that. If they Disney will find a way to maneuver through this. And I think like that, what you said, like you brilliantly pointed that out, Vash, in the TOS about how they can change who needs reservations and who doesn't. They're telling you right there, these ticket holders are not going to be in the same boat as key holders. I'm telling you right there. That's their plan, right?
Of course. And that restriction, might stay in certain ways that are going to be different from Walt Disney World, from Disneyland, right? Because Disneyland is attempting to get into the tourist market, whereas Walt Disney World has been there, for the last 50 years, right? So there might be restrictions on that, on that resort that are maybe different at Disneyland. But they're telling you right here, they're probably going to be looking to alter that, maybe significantly, come January, and that might placate all three sides. Right. All three sides want something, and as long as their vested interests are met, well, there you go. Go ahead, OG. What was your?
I was going to ask you, and I really honestly don't know the answer to this, and this is what's kind of boggling my mind a little bit. Okay, so the Inspire Key is sort of a new product, right? So it's not a dream key. It's a new product, right?
Yes.
So what happens? Let's say you're a dream key holder and you want to renew. Well, can you renew into the Inspire Key? Because it's not the same key though. So when you renew, you're technically buying a new pass, no?
So the TOS makes this very clear. Because this was something that was brought up in conversations both on Five Fires and elsewhere. Within the renewal period, and I believe that's anywhere between 30 and 45 days, you can check me on that, but it's within like a month, okay? Within the renewal period, you can upgrade or downgrade.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Outside of that, you can only go up. Oh, so that's how they're kind of getting away with that. And the thing I want to bring to people's attention is this. Now, I understand this is you go ahead and show my screen here.
Yeah, absolutely. I got you.
I understand that there are Dream Key recipients who will be on the program for a little while, so the Dream Key is represented for those people who still have that pass. But I just want to clarify, this isn't replacing the Inspire. This is a new product in the form of. I'm sorry, this isn't replacing the Dream. Okay, let me just rework that out here. I do apologize, guys. A lot of information. No. This Inspire Pass isn't replacing the Dream. Okay, this is a new product, which is very significant as it relates to the lawsuit, right? Because any more, let's say, legal exposure is completely null and void with the introduction of a new product at a new rate and with its own conditions, terms and conditions, and so forth. I thought that was very clever the way that Disney did that. But that also suggests that there might be a future in which the Dream Key comes back on post-lawsuit, but at an even higher price. So, just like the Signature and Signature Plus passes, right? That was that way back in 2019 and before, where in the case of the Inspire, you have, I think it's like 2 weeks that aren't available, right? Yes, 2 weeks. Very similar in structure to the Signature level of pass that existed before the events of 2020. Okay. Now, the Dream Key might be put back on, but maybe at $200 more, let's say, than the Inspire Key. And that would be a very similar structure to how it was back with the Signature and Signature Plus relationship. So, So I just kind of want people to kind of see that. Some people were suggesting, maybe the Dream Key comes back at $2,000. Maybe it does, with an altered TOS, of course, and with other perks and benefits associated with that. Now, I do think there might be some kind of God pass in the future, right? God pass. So, or the. Who was it? Who was the wizard? Jensen pass, let's say. Yeah. Okay. That maybe that maybe doesn't have a reservation system attached at all. Grid 365, all that kind of stuff, but maybe at a much higher cost, maybe like 5,000, 6,000, something like that. That's kind of what I've heard before. So it's a very kind of interesting thing. Now, OG, final thoughts here.
Overall, here's the thing. It's all kind of. I'll be completely honest with you. I think overall the whole thing is really gross because it's all a bunch of legal maneuvering on both sides. I mean, it is kind of gross. It is. It's really, really gross. At the end of the day, I just want people to enjoy these places and be able to experience them and have the best experience possible while there, and hopefully the dust can settle and we can just kind of get to a point where things are normalized again. And there's not so much it's not so contentious and stuff with, the key holders battling Disney and Disney battling the key holders. I kind of want to get to a point where everything's just settled and we're kind of in a routine now. And, but I've said it before though, and I'll continue to say it. I will always root for the tourists. I will always root for those day ticketers because those are the people that go once in a lifetime. Those are the people that are going once every 5 years or once every 10 years. And I will always prioritize them, even though I am a local and I am a key holder who goes all the time. I do think that as responsible citizens of Disneyland, as Bricky from Adventures in Design calls us, I do think we have to sort of learn to put aside our own needs and step aside and let someone else step in and enjoy the park. And it's kind of almost like the equivalent of you're watching the fireworks and there's that family behind you from Australia and their kid can't see. Don't be a D-bag, move to the side, let them go in front of you so the kid from Australia can see the fireworks, the fireworks show you've seen 300 times. That's kind of on a small scale what I'm talking about here with the access, just, let's just all as Magic Key holders have a little empathy towards people that don't get the access like we do and don't go all the time and haven't been on every ride 4,000 times. That's all I'm saying. That's why I'll always be a champion for these folks. And not to say I don't think the locals have a part in this whole story. They absolutely do, myself included. We all love this place. But I just think that I like the direction Disney's going, where they're prioritizing them, because I think that, number one, financially it works out better for Disney, but number two, I just think that when it's a once in a lifetime visit, it's got to be special. It's got to be special. So.
It does, and look, listen. I mean, I can tell you from firsthand experience.
Yeah.
I haven't had a annual pass for quite a while because it just got too expensive. It just didn't make sense financially for the amount of visits that we made in a year, let's say. And but what we noticed was our experience was hindered or greatly diminished by just the influx of rabid annual pass holders. I can just tell you that. Now, look, I sympathize with annual pass holders for sure, and I don't mean to come off as snobbish or anti-annual pass holder. I believe they do have a place when it comes to the kind of the ingredients list that makes up Disneyland annual visitation. Right? They have a place there, but when you are a ticket holder and you're paying, probably, upwards of $200 a day just to be there in the park, and your experience might, is affected by pass holders who might be paying, as little as pennies on the dollar to be there, multiple times a week or so forth. It gets grating. And it doesn't make the experience maybe as special as it had been in previous years when the annual pass holder population was quite lower. It's just, I understand this is not a great situation for anybody, but I just want to clarify that this isn't some factory making widgets that everybody and their grandmother can just buy and they can make an infinite amount of, right? We heard Bob Beard at JPEG talk about this as it relates to, Disney Plus, right? That anybody can sign up and there's no kind of limit on that supply. This is a park that can only let in a certain number of people per day. There's a finite amount of supply. And yes, you can expand it, but it will always be finite. And so you have to delineate between the people that want to go ahead and experience that. How do you do that? Disney's attempting to do that with this kind of current methodology with the reservation system and the new Magic Key program and so forth. And I have my disagreements with it, even as it relates to somebody from an annual pass holder's perspective. I have issues with it. I have issues with the discounts on Genie Plus. I think that the service is just out of control at Walt Disney World. And I don't like to see that, maybe additional access on the Genie Plus system enacted at Disneyland, because I think it, with more access, becomes a much more inferior product as time goes on. But all that aside, I want everybody to be happy at the end of the day. It's just very hard to do that when you have such a supply limited business. So that's kind of all I'm saying, and I hope we got our piece out there.
No, 100%. And what a play! What a great spot Disney's in right now, that people are fighting to get into their parks. I mean, that's not a bad place to be when you're a business owner.
Yeah, and I want to to put a final point on this.
Yeah.
Attraction 360 actually came with the receipts here.
Oh yeah,
literally.
Let's talk about this one, because this is interesting.
This is interesting, right? They say, you can get 5 SoCal theme park passes for way less than the price of Disneyland's Inspire Key at $15.99. Universal Studios Hollywood with parking, $2.99. Knott's Berry Farm with parking, $180. Six Flags Magic Mountain with parking, $195. SeaWorld San Diego with parking, $150, and Legoland with parking, $239. I'm surprised Legoland is that expensive. Anyway, okay, the grand total being $1,063. It does say something about valuation. OG, what do you have to say to this?
Well, I mean, I've always said it. I mean, I can get beef anywhere. I can go to McDonald's. I can buy, I don't know. I can get beef at McDonald's. I can go off the dollar menu, right? And buy 30 hamburgers at McDonald's for the price of one steak over at Ruth Chris Steakhouse. I could be like, oh, well, look, I get 30 burgers over here, and I'm only getting one steak over here. Well, there is a quality difference. And look, I'm not putting any of these parks down, because Universal is does a fantastic product. They all do, Knott's, all of them, but it's not on the same level. Like you're not, a lot of these parks, even Universal, they fall short. You know what I'm saying? In my opinion. So I think there is that gap. They're not, if they were all on the same playing field in terms of the offerings, I'd say this is a fair argument to make. But they're clearly not. I mean, Legoland is nowhere near what Disneyland offers. So it's hard to say, well, Legoland is or Six Flags even. Like, Six Flags. Okay, so Six Flags charges this much. Yeah, but are you getting Indiana Jones Adventure or any Rise of the Resistance, anything on that level? Even are you getting anything on Mr. Toad's level at Six Flags? I mean, it's a little hard to compare. It's a little apples and oranges, in my opinion. Universal is definitely the one that comes the closest, but it's still not the same valuation.
Well, let's talk about that valuation, because I'll say something right here, right now. Okay, I'm gonna go balls to the wall.
Here we go for George.
George would say.
Here we go for George.
Okay, let's go ahead and do this. Let's make it a valuation type system, right? Yeah. Let's put all the offerings, services, theme park attractions, shows, all of that. Combine it between Universal, Knott's, Six Flags, SeaWorld San Diego, Legoland. And let's say, hypothetically, they were all in one mega park, right? That you could go in there and get access to all of them. At a little over $1,000, I say that valuation, as it compares to Disney, is appropriate. Because I think Disney, with the Disneyland Resort, with all that it has to offer, the 2 theme parks, Downtown Disney, let's not include Downtown Disney, just the 2 theme parks and all of that with all their ride shows and attractions, I think that valuation is actually pretty accurate. And it's crazy because in terms of raw attraction count, that might be a little skewed the other way. But think about the quality of some of those experiences. Think about Rise of the Resistance. Think about Radiator Springs Racers or Indiana Jones Adventure, or maybe even Pirates of the Caribbean for that matter. Do any one of those parks, by themselves have something on offer that can come even close to that? I mean, maybe with Universal in some aspects, but overall, not really. So I think that valuation right there, I'm going to say it right here, right now. I think it's absolutely appropriate because the quality of the experiences on offer at Disney compared to these other parks, I think isn't even close, even at this point.
No, I agree. I completely agree. And that's not to diminish these parks. I love going to Universal. I got to admit, I've never been to Six Flags. And that's just a me thing because I'm not into big roller coasters. I'm sorry, Theme Park Wizard. Our buddy Theme Park Wizard. I'm not into these crazy roller coasters. I don't really even hit up the Incredicoaster that much at Disney, I'm just not into that kind of stuff. Yeah. But these parks all offer great stuff for what they do.
Right.
But I agree with you. The valuation, though, it's different.
And look, and your subjective valuation might be different. For example, right? OG, you don't really necessarily value what's on offer at Six Flags Magic Mountain. So your valuation's a little bit skewed. Right. Or you value Disneyland more, Universal more, whatever, right? Again, your subjective valuation might be different, but objective valuation, I think this is reasonable, as crazy as that sounds. Yeah. Look, Six Flags has a lot of great coasters, a lot of mean coasters, a lot of great stuff that gets me excited for sure.
Right.
But do they necessarily have a coaster like Big Thunder Mountain Railroad or Space Mountain in terms of the actual theme and quality of experience? Hell, I don't even think Six Flags Magic Mountain has a coaster on offer that has synchronized audio, for example, right? And you could just go down the list on what makes a quality experience that much greater. But I think, I think this is I think this is an adequate valuation here, just in terms of objectivity. Subjectively, that might be very different. Legoland, though, at $239, that's a lot, though.
That's a lot.
I'm just going to say, that's a lot. That should nowhere... I don't think that should be over Knott's, man. Knott's they're giving you a hell of a value. Hey.
I agree with you on that.
Folks, it's a nice park. Go there.
It is a nice park. And one thing I will say about Knott's, which I absolutely love, is they are such a great neighbor to Disney because... Knott's always shows love. Like Knott's will poke fun at Disney, on their Halloween events and stuff, but Knott's always shows a lot of class, man. And I got to give it to them. Like they're always the ones out there when Disneyland has a big anniversary, showing love to their sister park to the mouse across the street kind of thing. And I love that they do that. And they've always showed a lot of class over the years. And I really respect what they do over there. I really, really do.
I remember when Knott's, and Disneyland used to be closed for 2 days out of the year. They used to, they used to do it where I believe Disney was closed Mondays and Tuesdays, and then Knott's was closed Wednesdays and Thursdays, in order to share some of that visitation and those patterns and stuff like that. They have carried on with that, and I will say, Matt We Met, which runs the Cedar Fair, or what is it? It's Cedar Fair, and then what's the anyway, Cedar Parks and Resorts, right? That runs that operation. It's a class act. I know from firsthand. He's a good dude, and the way they've been willing to or have been able to kind of maintain some of those practices, even from the Knott's family. Good stuff right there. I'll give it to him for sure. But
it is.
I think there's another discussion that we wanted to have.
There's a big one. One last topic. One last topic we got to bring up, and this is actually a Florida thing, but it does relate to Disneyland because of, we'll get into it. Let me go ahead and share your screen.
Yes.
And this is from our friend Braden over at Mickey Views. Okay, so the Walt projection, mostly visible on the side in these out-of-park shots, will be projected inside the 50th emblem on the front of the castle, which should make for some great photos when it debuts. Now, what he's talking about here is they're going to be adding some Walt Disney and some park iconography. I think I even saw some Carousel of Progress stuff on these projections. They're adding all this stuff to Enchantment, their 50th anniversary fireworks show. And I absolutely love this. Now, here's the thing. I have gone on this channel the past month now and have kind of railed against Disney for canceling or omitting Walt Disney's speech on July 17th. All right. I gotta say, this move makes me really happy. You cannot erase Walt Disney. You cannot erase Walt Disney. And the fact that the park in Florida is leaning into Walt, and like you see it here, they're adding him to this projection show. Who knows why? Maybe because of fan outcry, because of what happened here at Disneyland. Maybe because of the fan outcry, because of the rumors that they were going to remove the Walt part of Walt Disney World.
Or the 50th,
I don't know what it is.
Or the outcry from the 50th in general.
Or the outcry from the 50th in general that had nothing to do with the actual park and the history. Whatever the case may be, I commend Disney for doing this. This is exactly what Florida should have got in the first place. Some real emotional connection to this park and who actually founded the park. Him and Roy. I'm not going to diminish Roy's involvement in this at all. Roy was an absolute rock star in finishing.
And Roy is featured in this if you look very closely, right about here ish. Okay, you'll see it. Hold on. Yeah,
he's
Roy,
there. That's him.
He's there. He's there. So that's good to see. I like to see that because, again, this was a lot of people were talking about and were clamoring for as related to the 50th. So to put this in here, and it looks like it's going to be in preparation for the 100th anniversary, that is very good. I will say it doesn't necessarily bode well for people who want Happily Ever After back, but that's a whole different story, right?
Oh, that's interesting. What do you mean by that? Like, elaborate on that. That's interesting.
Well, the reason I bring that up is because it looks like this is all going to be Enchantment related. This is going to be maybe a pre-show for Enchantment, which suggests that Enchantment may be with us for the extended period of an extended period of time. Now, this might be just to kind of cap off the 50th. I'm not saying that. Maybe they include something like this for the 100th anniversary going forward with Happily Ever After included and all that. But it sounds like, at least how Mickey Views worded their tweet here, the Walt Intro Edition to Disney Enchantment is now 100% confirmed thanks to One Little Spark JL, who caught it during live testing. It looks like they, and this is kind of what it sounds like to me, I don't think they would do this if Enchantment was not going to be around for a little bit longer. It sounds like to me they're going to keep Enchantment and just put this little tag on, which Look, I know a lot of people were kind of hoping that Happily Ever After would come back, and I still think it might, but it doesn't look like it's going to be happening off the bat. If in fact these rumors are true, that this is just going to be specifically for kind of an enchantment. What is it? Prologue or yeah, I think it'd be a prologue, right? It'd be
yeah, I believe so.
Or introductory priest, whatever.
Yeah,
you get what I'm getting.
Yeah, no, I think this. I love this. I love this. I'm a total nerd for this stuff. Anything Walt, I just get goosebumps. I really love. Look, I've been really concerned ever since that July 17th, and then hearing the rumors that they want to remove Walt from Walt Disney World. Whether those were true or not, I don't know. But there were just a lot of kind of like, stuff out there for the past month about kind of getting rid of Walt, and it just left a bad taste in my mouth, and I'm just like, oh gosh, whether this stuff is for political reasons or some other reason, some guy forgot to push the button to play the speed. I don't care what the reason is, really. The fact is that they're leaving Walt out of the parks, and that bothers me, and the fact that Walt Disney World is doing this, they're adding this in. I love it. And this really does show, I got to say, this really does show, look, I don't think this was planned years ago that in August or September of 2022, like halfway through the 50th, we're gonna do a Walt tag. I really do believe it. Maybe I'm just naive. I really do believe that JPEG and Tomorrow are listening to fans. They saw the outcry on multiple levels in terms of like this fireworks show in particular and the removal of Walt and the rumors. I think they heard that outcry and they're reacting to it. We're even seeing other rumors in regards to Paris about, Chapek and Tomorrow not being too happy with how the Iron Man Avengers Flight Force coaster is doing, and they want to have changes in there. It's not up to snuff. It's not up to the quality. This is all very encouraging. And this is what happens when you have a CEO that is very data-driven, customer-focused, is that these kind of changes happen. Chapek, you can hate him, you can hate his guts, you can think he's a terrible person, whatever, but he is very customer-focused. He said it many, many times in many, many interviews and many, many quarterly earnings, we'll go where the customer takes us.
Yeah.
And if you're complaining about stuff and you want something to happen, there's a good chance it's going to happen under him because he's listening. They are listening, you guys.
They are. And now, unfortunately, they're, a little bit more reactive and not proactive as maybe I would want them to be. But at least they are reactive to the extent that they'll imbue changes or make changes as necessary. And I think they got a lot of feedback from the 50th anniversary. And, we had surveys that suggested that, hey, was the 50th lacking in, what is it, iconography from the past or references to history and so forth. That was included in a survey. And it looks like they did hear those and are imbuing that knowledge and data into some of their offerings for the 50th, in the form of enchantment, in the form of what you're seeing right now on screen. It's interesting. They actually make use of that little 50th medallion in the at the very very front of the castle. So that suggests that if they do keep this for the 100th anniversary, maybe a 100th medallion takes the place of the 50th medallion. Oh, maybe that way they can use that as a kind of a screen real estate, so to speak. But yeah, that's besides the point. They are reacting in a way that's very favorable. Like you said, if for Avengers Flight Force, we were hearing before then that Bob Chapek maybe wasn't necessarily happy with the amount of investment that the Parks and Resorts division was getting. And then we hear the Avengers Flight Force that they want to make changes. Then we hear that from the quarterly earnings call that $6 billion, as much as $6 billion might be dedicated towards the Parks and Resorts division, the Parks Experiences and Products division. That's all good stuff, folks. That's all suggesting that they're listening, that they're willing to make capital expenditures, capital investment into this kind of division that we love so much. And they just have to maybe necessarily control how many people access those new additions and new changes on the back end. But that's a whole other story that we got into earlier.
Right.
It's encouraging. And I keep telling people, look, would Chapek have been my choice? No.
And not mine either, to be honest with you. I wouldn't have picked him.
Right. I wouldn't have picked him, and I still have my reservations about Chapek, don't get me wrong. But for the here and now, as economic conditions exist, as the kind of maybe politically charged infighting within the company exists, right? He is the best person for the job at this very moment. Maybe that might not be the case 7 years from now when hopefully by that time, economic conditions improve and so forth. Sorry, I don't mean to freak everybody out there. But maybe some years from now, when economic conditions improve, maybe when the cash flow situation has improved for the Walt Disney Company as it relates to this $70 billion acquisition, or the acquisition of Hulu that's probably coming up here, that's going to suck even more money from the coffers and so forth. All those kind of things, right? The political divide within the company. Maybe when those things improve, maybe somebody else should take the reins at that point, right? Maybe somebody else might be better poised to make decisions and maybe bring the company in line with maybe what we kind of think and kind of hope for from this company. But for right now, the person to weather these storms, I think there's nobody person than Bob Chapek, to be honest with you.
Right. I have a question for you, Dre, and I actually just thought about this. So I don't mean to spring it on you, I honestly don't know the answer to this, and you might not know the answer, and that's fine.
Sure.
But I think ever since Michael Eisner, really, like Disney fans sort of expect their Disney CEOs to be just chocked full of personality, right? Like very much like this Walt Disney-esque figure.
Yeah.
Eisner was like all about that. Bob Iger kind of was too, in a weird way. Like he was sort of like just different, Yeah. But Chapek isn't. Chapek is kind of like just behind the scenes, kind of a businessy kind of guy.
Yeah.
The prior CEOs after Walt, like what was it? Don Tatum, I think, was one of them.
Yeah.
Do you know how they were in turn? Like I don't really ever hear.
There was Card Walker, Miller,
Don Tatum, Ron Miller, right? But were they just Uncle Walt, just bursting with personality kind of CEOs, or was that something that were they more like Chapek? I kind of feel like a lot of these guys, like Card Walker, Don Tatum, they were kind of like on the personality end, more like Bob Chapek. No, I mean I could be wrong. I'm just asking.
Oh, I can just tell you right now, Matthew Murray is itching to get into this conversation, right?
Yeah.
He loves talking about the C-suite executives, right? Okay. Well, I'll say this. You have to understand that the people like Bob Iger and Michael Eisner were cut very differently than the cloth, maybe necessarily, of the people who preceded them, right? Initially after Walt.
Right.
Because those people were great lieutenants. I think they could, take orders from Walt Disney as passed down by them and make it happen. And I think the CEO position, as they embodied it, reflected that as much. They were a little bit more business orientated. They were a little bit more, maybe less customer facing, right? And they were talking to shareholders and so forth, because the company had gone public very recently, I believe in the early 60s, right? Late 50s, somewhere around there. Okay. 54? Something like that. Okay.
Something like that. Yeah.
Something like that. Okay.
Period.
Whatever. The fact remains, though, that the CEO position was never really maybe envisioned at that time to be super customer facing. That changed, I think, with the introduction of Michael Eisner, who came from the entertainment industry. So the mindset being, hey, look, listen, if I'm going to be in front of the camera, I'm going to come at it from a little bit more of an entertainment-minded or perspective way of doing it. Maybe embody some of the qualities of Walt, but do it in my own style, my own fashion. I'm an entertainment guy. Bob Iger carried that torch very well, being a weatherman, being previously in front of the camera very, very often, coming from the entertainment industry, right? And so he necessarily carried that kind of tradition on from Michael Eisner to entertainment guys, not lieutenants, entertainment guys.
Right.
Bob Chapek, on the other hand, comes from a different, a different perspective, right? And he has said this publicly, like, hey, I didn't come from the entertainment world. I came from the consumer products world or the theme park world. Very different, right? And I'll say this. He has necessarily had to be a little bit more consumer orientated, but not to the extent, not from the entertainment or the image perspective of Michael Eisner and Bob Iger. So to that extent, I don't think he'll ever embody those qualities. But I think the question is, does he need to? Is that right? Does he need to embody those prior qualities?
Right.
I would say no.
Right.
If in fact he doesn't want to be kind of the face of the company, like his predecessors were. In the time between Walt Disney and Michael Eisner, the higher kind of range executives weren't.
That's what I'm saying. And that's what I'm saying. It's kind of almost like a return to form in a way, like post-Walt, where Don Tatum, Card Walker, these guys weren't the Uncle Walt figure, charismatic kind of guys. They were very much just business guys running the company that bears his name, kind of very similar to Chapek, right? And we can get into the weeds about, well, which CEO made better decisions. I mean, Card Walker was fantastic. I mean, I'm not, diminishing these guys or trying to say like Chapek is better or this guy. No, I'm not saying anything like that. I'm just saying in terms of like the optics and how they present themselves to the public, I feel like Chapek would fit well with those early post-Walt CEOs, the Don Tatums, the Card Walkers. He kind of fits in that mold. He's more them than he is like an Eisner or a Bob Iger, and that's just, I kind of put him in that same category as the old school kind of CEOs.
Yeah, no, I kind of agree with that.
Or even Roy Disney, to be honest.
It's interesting that you say this, because I never really kind of thought about it in this way, but I think you're right. I think it is kind of a return to form. And look, listen, do I need to be the face of every single major announcement for all these, divisions, being on TV every single day and doing all that? No. Now I'll be the face of super, big announcements as it relates to the finance side of things, right? As a chief executive, I might need to be. But in terms of, being this kind of showman that Michael Eisner or Bob Iger did, I don't necessarily think that it's that's what it needs to be. A lot of people have said that, hey, this is the reason why you go with a Michael Eisner or Bob Iger, these kind of, these entertainment executives that came from the industry, right?
Right.
And there might have been a wanting to or desire to do that from those particular executives to be the face of the company, but does it necessarily need a face? I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, you can make the argument for and against. And
also, and this is just kind of like a brainstorm session, there's no real right or wrong answer, but like the thing too is like, what would Walt have really like? I'm very curious, and I know this is like a cliche thing. What would Walt have wanted? But I'm always curious of what he would have thought. But after his passing, would Walt have wanted someone to step in and try to mimic his style, or would he want that person to step in and just sort of run the business and kind of continue to do what he started? And I'm very curious as to, and we'll never know the answer. I'm very curious as to what Walt, because look, Walt was the guy. He would tell his artists like, no, my name is on that building, not yours. Right?
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, absolutely.
So I wonder, would he have taken offense to something like what Michael Eisner did, where he was like, oh, now I'm Uncle Walt? I don't know. And that's a fair question. And I'm not trying to say yes or no, but it is something that I think is interesting to talk about.
It is interesting. I mean, I think the perception for years has been, well, it's a family company, and it should keep that kind of family image. And be spearheaded by some face of it, right?
Right.
I think that's been the desire. You make an interesting point that maybe Walt Disney himself wouldn't have necessarily wanted that from anybody else but him. But how does that, Walt Disney never envisioned a time after him because he was always going to be around, right? He was, he wasn't looking to pass the reins on, that kind of thing. It was Walt's company. It's Walt's name. And I tell you what, folks, you want to see how far this extended out. go to Braden's secondary YouTube channel. I believe it's called Addresses Unknown.
Yep. I'll link it down below. Braden's freaking awesome. Braden is like the GOAT, man. I will link to that down below. Address Unknown. It's a great channel. He just started documentary style Disney stuff. Phenomenal.
And I'm telling you, in Addresses Unknown, you see in the first documentary that they've released, the kind of, the other master builder of Disneyland, I believe, is kind of what the name of that first documentary is. But it's all, going into the history of C.V. Wood and his, formation of Disneyland and so forth, and construction of it, right? Walt Disney and C.V. Wood gets into a tussle, and Walt Disney says very clearly, "This is my company. This is my park. You gotta fire C.V. Wood here," even though he was under a different entity. Legally, Walt Disney necessarily couldn't do that, but he was still suggesting this was my park, and this guy's out of here. I run the show ultimately,
right?
And I will say that kind of ownership stake in this, Look, this is a very interesting history because Disneyland was kind of a separate entity at certain respects, but still using kind of company money, the studio money, in order to fund projects and so forth and stuff like that. And legally, they could have been in a real bind because remember, the company was public. You were using investor dollars, shareholder dollars, company assets, studio assets in order to fulfill this thing that was Disneyland, but it wasn't owned by the studio. And then, Walt has a financial stake in it with Rent Law. He owns Imagineering rights, but he's using company money in order to fulfill what they want and so forth. It was a really kind of, potentially, as George would say, sticky situation, right? And Roy was looking to protect Walt from, legal exposure, essentially, legal liability. And it came to a head where Roy was saying we have to purchase Disneyland and Imagineering in order to get this kind of on the books and in order to kind of make this all above board, let's say, right? But Walt, there was a little bit of a negotiation for Disneyland, right? Or at least their stake in it at that time. But Imagineering, that was the thing. It was Wet Enterprises. That was the thing that really created a divide between the brothers. Now there were shouting matches between the two of them. It was very contentious, and for like 6 months in the late '60s, they didn't talk to each other.
Wow,
at all. And Walt said some pretty disparaging things about his brother during this time.
Horrible.
It was a thing. But that's the thing. Walt, he felt like he was losing something there of his as it became a company asset. Now, he still had, obviously he was still, the head of Disney, right? The head of Disney at that time. And he felt it was kind of his company. But because it was kind of public and this public entity that he had formed and created, right? But was kind of now, influenced by shareholders and so forth. This public entity
he lost a little bit.
was taking his kind of private entity in the form of Disneyland and WED. He definitely felt like he was losing something there. That the dynamic was changing, and he he let it known to Roy that was definitely the case, and that he wasn't necessarily getting paid what he may have felt that these things were worth in order to kind of take these things from him.
Yeah,
it was a very interesting thing, dude.
Not
a lot of people talk about it, but it's it just reflects the ownership I think that Walt had for some of his creations.
No, 100%. And that's why I think we would all be very surprised if he somehow miraculously came back down. Walt just returned back somehow.
Sure.
I think we would all be very surprised at what he approved of and what he disapproved of.
Yes.
I think a lot of fans have their preconceived notions. Oh, he'd love Michael Eisner. Oh, of course he'd love him. I wouldn't be so sure about that. And look, I'm not saying one way or the other, but like you said, he had ownership of this thing. And to see someone else step in and try to imitate kind of his shtick, I could definitely see that rubbing him the wrong way. I don't know.
Yes, absolutely. I could see that too. And I could also see maybe Chapek's, maybe current desires to step away from the kind of, what is it? Crystalline, clean family image that maybe Disney has in the form of like maybe sports gambling and so forth.
Right.
Would Walt approve of that? I don't think so. And not even Bob Iger had the balls to get into that arena. I mean, you think of Disney Cruise Lines. Disney Cruise Lines initially, when they made their debut, they were heavily criticized by not having gambling opportunities on board, but that was consistent with their kind of family image that Michael Eisner was very much protective of. Yeah. But Chapek, and this is kind of the different thinking here. We talk about it in the form of public image, but being this kind of public face necessarily of this kind of family company, right? Right. Chapek doesn't have reverence for that. He's a business guy, and when he sees an opportunity for Disney to be involved in something like sports gambling, hey, we're going to go in that direction. And he has said that they've done some polling and that they've looked into maybe this kind of brand withdrawal that is possible, right, from people who kind of get like, oh, I don't maybe necessarily like this. I want to pull back. And he is suggesting that they have no problems with that going forward. And he's even said on the last quarterly earnings call, interestingly enough, he said that people under 30 actually they have a desire for Disney to step into this space. And he's going to go ahead and follow that. And it's a very interesting thing here.
Here's the thing. I will complete full disclosure. I do not follow sports. I couldn't tell you who played in the last Super Bowl. I don't care. I don't follow any of it, right? I haven't watched more than 5.5 seconds of ESPN in my entire life. But I will say this. The sports betting thing, I think I'm on a different page than a lot of other Disney fans when it comes to sports betting.
Sure.
I don't necessarily think it's that like risque of a thing. Like, and look, I don't know. This is my opinion. Like, I see like in like offices, like I know my job, like they would pass around like a fantasy football thing and they would bet on it or whatever. Right. It's very commonplace, and it's not something that like I would think of as like inappropriate. Like, okay, so I'm going to bet on so-and-so team to win or whatever. I don't see that as like a vulgar, vile thing. For me, I'm fine with it. And it's all going to be kind of relegated to the ESPN brand, which is not like a kiddie brand anyway. It's sort of like families can watch sports together, but ESPN to me is sort of like, it's older. It's not like they're going to have like, like I said to you, I think on social media a few days ago, like, Tinkerbell and Bluey slot machines on the cruise lines. Yeah. This is all going to be within that ESPN branding.
Yes.
And I think that it is more adult in terms of the branding. I don't know. And I just don't see the moral issue with betting even. I mean, obviously, look, people can obviously abuse gambling. Yes. Obviously, but they can abuse alcohol too, and that's in Disney parks. So it's like
it is, which we never thought was necessarily going to be the case. But even a very recent kind of post-Walt place for the company in the 1980s. That's when Epcot came out, and that's when Epcot had drinking available. That was in 1982, only less than 20 years removed from Walt's death, and yet those executives who were very much connected to the Walt phase of the company made that decision. Very, very kind of interesting, Yeah. Look, listen. I'll say this: just like alcohol is being perceived differently, in the modern context, I think so. Specifically, sports gambling is being perceived differently. Now, it's been look, I could just tell you for one thing, OG, I've watched a lot of football games in my lifetime. Okay. And those football games have some pretty good commercials from time to time. A lot of the commercials for the last, I would say, 3-4 years have been dominated by sports gambling. I mean, this is definitely a thing. It's been taken off, and the discussion around gambling and some of the kind of undesirable elements of it has been most associated with maybe places of gambling, right?
That's fair.
And the things that happen, therein or around those certain places, right? I mean, I think there were some like statistics that came out in the 1990s or so forth that any place that set up a casino, you get, what is it? Increased rates of, I should say,
you can say it.
Say?
Okay.
Well, I don't want to. Well, it's a family channel. Let's say
solicitation
of
persuasion,
maybe additional services. Let's say that goes up, but also related trafficking in regards to that too goes up and so forth. There are some maybe some elements that people aren't necessarily comfortable with, but now that you've kind of what's the term I want to say? What is it? Decentralized it,
right,
and spread it out. So that people can actually do this on their mobile devices at home. It doesn't necessarily come with a lot of those things that maybe people, these kind of undesirable elements that maybe were kind of linked to the hip with some of these gambling houses and so forth. Right. And so I think that has kind of. And that's just one aspect of it, but I think that's a big aspect of why that kind of perception around this kind of service has changed, and I think that will continue to change. And I think Bob Chapek is kind of looking at that and examining that before making a big decision like this, and kind of reading the room, so to speak. He's customer focused, right? He's customer kind of driven. Right, in terms of his philosophy, and I think this is a reflection of that. I think he's looking at it going, hey, look, listen, people want this, or people have a desire for this. Maybe Disney can provide for something like that, and I do think they will. It's interesting. We had a conversation with Ollie and stuff in the DMs about maybe certain investors maybe want to spin off ESPN and so forth. And I'm like, hey, look, listen, if they're going to make it profitable. And it is sports related revenues and programming is definitely a driver for their entire linear division, not just ESPN. So there's reasons to keep it on, even if it is losing money. But to make it profitable through sports gambling, I mean, I'm telling you, folks, ESPN just got a whole lot more valuable potentially. And if he can pull it off successfully, there's a lot of green behind that decision for sure.
There is, and it's very much a dance, a delicate dance, kind of like when they first introduced alcohol into Disney parks, where it's like Walt was initially concerned about alcohol in the parks because of the, like you said, the undesirable side effects of that thing.
Even a park itself. I mean, Lillian, she had obviously she's like, oh, why do you want to do a park type concept? It's dirty. It has all these undesirable elements, but yet Walt was able to overcome those, and maybe didn't envision overcoming those as it relates to alcohol, but I think the parks division did that as well. Go ahead.
Right? No, absolutely. So there's a way to do this stuff. And I think gambling or betting or sports betting or whatever, I think there's a way to do it kind of similar how Disney has handled alcohol. And I think there's a way to do it respectfully and within that Disney image without tainting the brand. But there is a delicate dance there. You don't want to go too hard. You want to respect the branding. You want to make sure that it's done in a tasteful way. So if he's going to do it in the right way. So, but overall, I'm not against it as long as it stays in the ESPN branding kind of like corner of the room. If you start getting into like the cruise lines with, like I said, like the Tinkerbell and the Lady and the Tramp slot machines, okay, then that's getting a little bit too much. But hey, ESPN, it's an older, skewed brand anyway. I don't know. I see no harm, no foul. It's not like they're building like strip clubs over at the in the cruise lines or something. That'd be different.
Yeah, and I would definitely agree with you. Look, it's all it's all how these things are implemented at the end of the day, right? There's a tasteful and tactful way to do this, right? And I think the wording used for the pass holders, to get back to that conversation just for a little bit here. Yeah. The unfavorable language, I actually think that was the tactful way to say it, because the alternative is you have somebody like Salim, the CEO of Six Flags, calling people
Walmart
low
shoppers or
class, Walmart people, goers, people on food stamps, supplementing their their food stamp usage with their with their meal programs at their parks. I mean, just some despicable, horrific things that were said there.
No tact at all.
Yeah. So, that's the kind of difference in terms of tact, I think. And I think Chapek will go about this in a tactful way. It's going to be interesting to see how we can do that while still leveraging what I believe Chapek sees in the synergistic, assets that they have to pull from in order to push something like a sports gambling. So it's going to be really fascinating. A final note though about the AP conversation, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
One thing I didn't include. I felt it maybe necessary.
Sure.
Because we were talking about people kind of undergoing that decision and so forth and being responsible with it.
Yeah.
The other thing that makes it kind of complicated is that they're only giving you this kind of renewal window to actually make a decision, which can be tough, right? And we were talking about it on the phone, how maybe they were using some kind of used salesman tactics in order to do so. One, diminishing supply and kind of making people think, hey, what are they going to do, and building up demand that way, right? This kind of artificial scarcity and maybe intimating that they aren't going to renew the pass system entirely and so forth. And now, with the limitation of only having renewals actually continue with the program, now you have this kind of decide now. You're only given kind of this 30-day, 45-day window in order to do so. Some people, maybe even less than that. It's quite fascinating. OG, you had some interesting things to say about that. Any thoughts on that?
Oh, no, it's 100%. It's totally a sales tactic. You go to the car lot, right? And the car salesman's pushing you to, no, just buy it now. Just buy it now. Let's go sign the paper. Let's go buy it now, buy it now, buy it now. You see websites, buy now to get the 20% discount. If you buy now before, in the next 20 minutes, you'll get a discount, yada, yada, yada. That's a tactic because they don't want you to think about it. They don't want you to go home and talk to your wife or your husband about it, because if you start to discuss it with anybody else, well, they might talk you out of it, right? So there's a tactic to sort of like buy now, buy now, buy now, buy now, buy now. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're making a situation where like Magic Keys are thinking like, okay, if I don't get it now though, I won't be able to get back in.
Yes.
So
and that's on purpose. That's a purposeful thing.
Oh, totally.
And
Absolutely.
I think we talked about it. I remember we talked about it privately for sure. That
yeah.
We were like, this doesn't really make sense that they're not delivering news on this, because they're building demand. If they want to go away from this annual pass holder system, why would they necessarily do this unless they were going to limit access on the back end, or through sales before, with just limiting what tiered annual passes were going to be available ultimately, they kind of did that, they were going to control access one way or another, and it looks like it's all building towards controlling the access in the back end. That's why I'm saying to people, hey, look, listen, if you didn't like how you were treated in the prior holiday season, look for a repeat of that. They have set themselves up nicely in order to do that. They are building demand in order to get so many people on the system that they can control post-purchase, right? And their level of access to these parks. They're going to have their cake and they're going to eat it too. And they're not going to have the undesirable, or I should say unfavorable mix that they just had. They're going to rectify all those solutions in one foul swoop here. I don't know if necessarily they're going to be 100% successful, but they have definitely set themselves up in order to be successful.
Yeah, well, and there's one thing Disney, like I said earlier in the conversation, Disney, there's a lot of criticisms of Disney and this, that, and the other. But there's one thing that I think everybody can agree on is that they're a very savvy company. Yeah. They know what the fuck they're doing. And yes, I'm telling you, they know what they're doing. And they're smart. And here's the other thing. It's like these fans, they seem very beholden. Like I talked about so much in the past, like how no matter, like, I've been in this community a very long time, and I've seen it over and over and over again. The complaining on social media, and then like the frenzy to like give them more money. It's never ending. We complain and then, oh, here, take my money, you know, and it's this constant cycle. Now that might change. I don't know how long Disney can sustain that. I mean, maybe eventually that won't happen anymore. Historically, though, it seems to be the case. And it's even recently. I mean, I went a whole year hearing how horrible the Magic Key program is. And now fans are like, oh, but what about the renewals? Oh, what if we can't renew? They're all stressing out over it. I'm like, well, why? You spent the whole year saying how much it sucked. And now you're stressing out about giving Disney more money? Why?
But that stress, that anxiety was intended. They did this on purpose in order to get people to lull them. Yeah, exactly. Because we heard from a lot of people that, oh, I'm out. I'm not doing this anymore. But notice how rapidly that tune changed when they just held back for a little bit. It wasn't even that long. And they built up all this demand and had people out the door screaming and yelling about getting into this program that maybe even 6 months ago, 9 months ago, people were saying they're out. It is
brilliant.
It is a fascinating thing, man. It's a fascinating thing, and I think they're gonna get it. And I think they're, we're gonna have people complaining on the back end, but yet you're locked into this system, right? And the only way out is up, essentially, with upgrading or whatever.
No, 100%. And you have to do your research, folks. Like, we are not advocating for you to renew or not renew. Just do your research. Know what you're getting into. The first time, you can say it was Disney's fault. They didn't let me know. I was confused about the blockouts and the reservations. Fine. This time, you know better. So if you're okay with that, give them your money and renew. If you're not okay with that, with the potential of being locked out, then don't renew. But this is the second time now, so you can't blame Disney now. If you renew, that's on you. If you renew, that's on you.
And there's a little bit of an additional complicating factor in the form of, hey, we're just going to limit these past sales to people who are renewing, and you only have kind of 30, 45 days to actually make that decision. Past that point, we're not going to guarantee that you're going to be able to access the system at all. So, and that kind of complicating factor, that's an intentional thing. And look, if you feel compelled to actually get a Magic Key because you want a certain level of access, it's what they want, and we won't judge you either way, for sure. But if you're complaining about a system afterwards, understand that you're knowingly going into that system with those terms and conditions pointedly illustrated to that end.
They're making it very clear right now what you're signing up for, and you have content creators like us, and I'm sure others will follow suit, that are telling you what's in the TOS.
Yes.
So what's in there. So you make your decision. Like, I'll be real. Like, I'm a lifer, man. I love Disney. I'll fucking do it, But if it's not something that you want to sign up for, then don't sign up for it, And
Yeah. And I would actually, I'll go one step further. I'll advise anybody, definitely read those terms and conditions, because I think they're just fascinating. Even if you're not looking at a Magic Key, definitely read those, because that definitely... It make those there's no bones about where they're going from reading it. Right. Okay, so I would encourage anybody to read it, because I think it's a fascinating read, to be honest with you. I'll retweet that on my Twitter account, so you can go ahead and see them for yourself. I already have, basically, but I'll go ahead and retweet it again, just to kind of make a finer point on it, because I think it is. Hey, if you're looking to make a Magic Key purchase, you definitely got to read it. But even if you're not, read it. It's fascinating anyway.
No, 100%. And all this work we're doing, Dre, and all these Magic Key holders is in one ear, out the next, and it's going to be...
Yeah, I'm going to get one for show. I'm getting that for show. And the hard fact,
that's what it is.
Hard facts, man. Hard facts. It's absolutely what they're going to do.
But it's okay. You know what? Seriously though, read the TOS, check it out, and look. It might be for you, it might not be for you. But at the end of the day, at least educate yourself into what you're buying into. Don't make that same mistake that a lot of people made with the first rollout. At least know what you're buying into. And if you're cool with that, that's great. I'll be honest with you. Like, I mean, I love being a pass holder. So, for me, I don't mind. I always want to be a part of Disney. Now, look, there might be a day where I might not be able to do it, Yeah. And maybe I'll have to buy, these day tickets and whatever. And I'll do that, You just have to find what works for you. That's all I'm saying. Find what works for you and go from there. But just educate yourself as to what you're buying into. Don't be surprised. Don't be caught off guard. Do it that way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it all comes down to the level of access that you want. And that's right for you. If you feel that you're going to be going so many days or have the idea of a level of access that will exceed maybe the amount of tickets that you can buy, and maybe it makes sense to embark on the system, maybe it makes sense to go ahead and do it.
Right.
But again, just understand that your access is probably going to be limited in more ways than maybe you initially thought, and you have to keep that in mind. And look, if you don't want to deal with the hassles of the system, like I said, tickets are going to be available, and it looks like that they might have maybe less restrictions going forward. We'll see. We'll see how that all plays out. But just understand there are options. I understand none of them are necessarily easy as it was before, right? Just buy a ticket, you get in, there you go, or you buy an AP, you can go whenever you want. It's not going to be that simple, folks, and that's going to be. It's going to be there's a reason for that, and that's going to be the foreseeable future for access as it relates to this park that we all know and love. So that's just it.
100%. 100%.
I don't think there is more to be said.
I think that's it. I think that's it. I want to thank you, brother, for coming on, talking shop. We dove into a lot of stuff today. Magic keys. We talked about the Walt stuff at Walt Disney World. We talked about Card Walker and Don Tatum and all that, like the management style. I mean, it was a really, really fascinating conversation today. Comment down below with all your viewpoints on what we talked about. We'd love to hear from you guys. But before we go, Dre, let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media, sir.
Hey, best place to find me is going to be at VashSky. It's right down there, just illustrated right down there. Go ahead, type it in the Twitter. Should pop up real fast. If you do, a follow would be nice. And, if you want to DM me, you can go ahead and do that. Tweet at me, whatever. It's all there. And if you want to see me, well, it's going to be on the channel you're watching right now on Orange Grove 55 at Freshly Squeezed. Your source for juicy news and info squeezed fresh right from the Grove.
Orchard fresh and delicious.
That's right. I love it. That is great.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you, Dr. Dre, for coming on, talking shop. Comment down below. We'd love to hear from you guys. And as always, have a wonderful, wonderful day.